In the wake of his assassination, I wrote a piece for the American Conservative called Charlie Kirk Was an Important Anti-War Voice. Now, I got a lot of good feedback on this thing, but I did get a lot of negative feedback too. I got feedback from people on the right who said, no, Charlie Kirk wasn't, that he was a neocon or something like that. I got pushback from people on the left who really hate Charlie Kirk, saying he's not anti-war, he's terrible, he's a Nazi or whatever. Well, apparently these people weren't observing what I've been observing about Charlie Kirk for some time now, because to me, this was before he was murdered, he was in that camp with Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly and a few Rand Paul, people like that, who were America first. They were against the war. Steve Bannon's one of them. But Charlie was in that fold, and increasingly more so. He might have rode the fence a little bit more for strategic reasons. I don't know. People have talked about that. But he was definitely more in that anti-war camp, as opposed to people like Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, Ted Cruz, who were certainly more neoconservative. But a lot of people didn't get this. So I'm going to share some clips of Charlie Kirk saying anti-war things. And I think all of this was in the last year, and some of it was just a couple days before he died. But I'll touch on that throughout. Enjoy this with me together. Let's watch. This is Charlie Kirk talking about Ukraine and America's place in that war with Russia.
Who benefits from peace and who benefits from war? Well, who benefits from peace? Well, the people of Ukraine benefit from peace. The people of America benefit from peace. Humanity benefits from peace. But then who benefits from war? The military-industrial complex, oligarchs of the ruling class of Ukraine. And you have to just say, what is best for our own country?
That's always the question to ask. America first. He's in that camp. That was an anti-war statement, what he just said, how it benefits the military-industrial complex. That's anti-war language. Here is Charlie Kirk being interviewed by Tucker Carlson not long ago and explaining sort of how Russiagate, the Russia hoax that was exposed, that Trump was in collusion with Putin, which was all made-up conspiracy theory nonsense by Democrats. They're talking about, Charlie Kirk's talking about how that, believing that, made Democrats more pro-war, less anti-war, at least when it comes to Ukraine. Check this out.
But when you think about it, it desensitized the entire Democrat Party to then have a very negative view of Russia, even beyond a normative Western view of Russia, as if Donald Trump is an attaché of the Kremlin. And if you hate Trump, you therefore must also hate Putin and Russia. So fast forward to Putin's invasion of Ukraine, you had the entire Democrat Party and the base of the Democrat Party that used to be anti-war, that used to be where the Ben and Jerry's guy was. You had him on your show. It was great. But the rank and file kind of had a subdued response at best to the financing of the Russian-Ukrainian war, largely because of Russiagate, because so many base members of the Democrat Party and the activists were led to believe that Donald Trump only became president because of the assistance of the Kremlin.
That's what they really believed, and it made the Democrat Party more neoconservative and pro-war than I've ever seen in my lifetime. Here's Charlie talking about America going to war with Iran.
And we must understand that if we were to do forceful regime change, sounds good, Lindsey Graham is cheering for that. What would happen to the refugees? Where would they go? Millions of people going to the West. The country could fall into civil war. America does not want, in any way, shape, or form, to have a long quagmire in the Middle East to try to get into another Iraq or Libya or Syria or Afghanistan.
All right, that's Charlie obviously arguing against U.S. wars with all these countries, with Iran at the top of the list. Now, after Charlie was murdered in cold blood, Tucker Carlson talked to Megyn Kelly about that, and part of the discussion was Tucker telling the story about how Charlie, being a friend and confidant to President Donald Trump, went to him very worried about the U.S. bombing Iran and being brave, being alone, and telling President Trump what he didn't want to hear maybe. But just listen to Tucker and what Charlie did that not a lot of people knew about.
He was one of the only people, I mean, truly one of the only people to go to the president whom he loved. He loved Donald Trump, like personally as well. And I think the president really loved him in a real way. But he was one of the only people to go to the Oval Office and say, sir, I totally understand and think Iran's really bad, but a war with Iran is not, is something that could really hurt our country. I mean, boy, that was an unpopular position. He didn't need to express it. Oh, of course. And he did it again. He didn't have some weird agenda. He wasn't mad at anybody. He was for his country, and he was for doing the right and wise and difficult thing. And he said that. He went to the Oval Office to say that. He took massive abuse from his own donors, which is also something that you don't see people. And he loved his donors. It wasn't a hostile thing, but they had a different view. A lot of them, not all, but a lot. And they expressed it to him in a very intense way. I know because he showed me.
I can only imagine what that abuse looked like. It's probably pretty harsh. And we're hearing after Kirk's passing that donors, pro-Israel donors who didn't like the direction that Charlie was going in and beginning to criticize Israel, that he was really getting the heat from them and probably losing a lot of money. That's something that Charlie and Megyn Kelly talked about just recently. So let's take a look at this.
And my moral character is being put into question. And so I think it's a hyper paranoid, like we're just going to try to, we're going to just stamp out everything type of practice. But it goes to the point where, if, for example, if I have less ability sometimes online to criticize the Israeli government without backlash than actual Israelis do.
That's absolutely true. That's something my old boss, Senator Rand Paul, used to say, that there's more debate over what Israel's government doing in, the Jerusalem Post than there is in America, because they shame you and they do exactly what Ben just described there. And he was feeling the heat. Megyn Kelly talked about feeling a little bit too. I'm going to leave you with one last clip. This was a day or two before Charlie Kirk got gunned down. This is what he was saying to Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro, one of the most pro-Israel, neoconservative voices in conservative media, and Charlie Kirk, who's just as popular and at that level, friends. This is what Charlie said to Ben Shapiro, who looked a little bit like a deer in the headlights here. Let's listen.
Charlie, we've pushed back against the media on COVID, on lockdowns, on Ukraine, on the border, so maybe we should also ask a question. Is the media totally presenting the truth when it comes to Israel? Just a question, that maybe we shouldn't believe everything the media says, because I know I've been conditioned to ask a lot more critical questions over the last couple of years. So, Ben, some people would accuse Israel of wanting to ethnically cleanse. Some people in the Israeli government are saying, again, it's all over the place, right? You have opinions all over. In your opinion, what would a good outcome 5 years from now be, and how does one respond to the claims of ethnic cleansing?
So he's bringing up ethnic cleansing because that's what's going on over there. Genocide, whatever you want to call it, that's what the world's recognizing as it is increasingly. But he's going there. He's talking about ethnic cleansing. He's saying, should we question Israel's government? As conservatives, we question our government. Why wouldn't we question this foreign government? And why is that bad? And why does that get you called certain names and slurs and remarks? Charlie Kirk was certainly in that anti-war camp, and increasingly so as he went along. He was asking all the right questions, and time and again was ending up on the anti-war side of that thing within a conservative context. And I noticed it for a very long time, and I was surprised after he passed and I wrote my piece that so many other people didn't recognize it. I think a lot of it was just out of pure hatred for him and sort of the ghoulish reactions that we're seeing in social media where people are celebrating his death, which is completely sick, and you're mentally ill if you're doing that. But one thing I wanted to do as somebody who admired what he was doing on an anti-war front was point out clearly with all these clips that Charlie was in the anti-war camp. That was a good thing. I would have loved to have seen how that developed, but unfortunately, his life was cut short at too young an age. But thank you, Charlie, for what you did while you were here for the anti-war cause.